Hey guys, welcome to Pearson Belt Home. We're live today, Tuesday, live at 5. I'm Ann, owner and creator, and we are located in Old Town Spring, which is in Spring, Texas, just a little north of Houston. And as you hop on, tell me hey, tell me where you're from. You know what? You can tell me the weather if you want. Our weather is just spot on today. We hit in the 50s last night, and we're in the 70s, maybe hit 80 today. Really wonderful weather for Houston, Texas, and I'm pretty excited. So I know that the cooler temps are coming, so boots and sweaters, that's my favorite time of year. And yes, I was born here in Texas, and I still don't like the heat, so I embrace the cooler temperatures. So what we're doing today is we are doing a kind of a user requested tutorial. So we'll be going over quite a few different things. We're going to go through distressing, dry brush, a wash, so whatever, and then we may have some time for some other techniques as well. So we'll go through a couple of different things using just two colors. We've got Dusty Blue right here, and we've got Bunker Hill Blue right here. So dark and a light blue. So what we're going to do, I've already have our first coat of the Dusty Blue on this just piece of wood. And again, it's just a tutorial. And I hope you guys can learn a little bit of something, maybe something new. So what we're going to do on this one is we're going to use this one to do some distressing. So we need to go ahead and put our alternate color on top. So this is Bunker Hill. We're going to cover it in, this is Dusty Blue. We're going to cover it in Bunker Hill. And we're going to do the opposite on another one so you guys can see the difference between light and dark. I like to see the difference. I like to make sample boards so I know how the piece is going to look. I tend to be a planner. There are times I just go straight in and start painting a piece, and then I end up that one's really wet. Then I end up having to repaint it. I know we had a piece that started out with, it was going to be white, then it turned gray, and then I ended up painting it tree frog green. So even if I prep ahead, sometimes I still change my mind on things. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out which one is got the excess water in it. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and paint right onto this one. And again, that's Dusty Blue, and we're going to paint right over it in our Bunker Hill Blue, okay? So we're going to cover all that up. And we're going to put this aside because we'll come back to it a little bit later so we can do our distressing with it at that point. We want it to dry. But I didn't want you guys to think I just had done some magic. I want you kind of to see where we go start to finish. So this is totally covering what we've painted, okay? So we're going to we can pretend these are drawer fronts or what have you. All right, so we're going to just cover it completely. And let me get this edge. All right. Okay. All right. I'm slinging paint today. All right, so that was Dusty Blue. Now it's covered in Bunker Hill Blue. I'm going to set it over so it can dry, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. So what I'm going to do next is, I'm trying to debate if I want that now. Go ahead and put it to clean. What we'll do next is take a similar board, painted opposite, but we're going to do a little prepping to it first. All right, so this is painted in Bunker Hill, and let's say we want to make it easier for your paint to not stick in the certain spots you want your paint to come off. You can use petroleum jelly and use it sparingly, and you're going to put it in parts where it would be logical that there's going to be wear to the piece. I've seen where there's like tables and then there's just like weird wear spot in the middle that painters leave or make. Now that would make sense if like your aunt brought a hot plate in and burnt that center, but typically that particular spot may not be a normal wear pattern. So typically edges, if it's got a drawer pull, maybe around the drawer pull will have some wear. So maybe where it may have some kicking, if it's a chair, you know, just different things, the arms, it's going to have some wear there. But if it's like in the very back in the middle, probably not going to have any wear. So kind of think logically. So I have a little bit of the petroleum jelly on my fingers, and I'm just going to put it on the edge. Okay, so be very careful with this, because where you put it, your paint is not going to stick. I mean, it might stick for a minute, but I think it'll come off eventually. So we're putting this on as a release for your paint to make it easier for you when you're distressing. So you want to be careful you don't have like crazy amounts, or like I said, in a weird spot. Okay, so we'll do the edging, and you can go a little more on some edges. Let's say there. We'll see what happens. Comes out awful, just clean it, repaint it, right? Okay, now if this was a drawer front and there's a pull right here, we're going to pretend we can put a little distressing there. We'll pretend there was a drawer pull right there. Okay, so we're going to have a weird distressing area, but that's okay. We're just experimenting. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and paint over this with our other color. We're going to paint over it with our dusty blue. Okay. And I do like to use saran wrap a lot to keep your paint from sticking to the lid. Otherwise, it pretty much bondos the lid and I can't get them off. All right. Let's get this whole enchilada here. And again, we're just going to cover it generously. Now, I have heard people put Vaseline on their jar lids. I just am stubborn and I like my saran wrap, so I guess you can try it out and let me know. But I'm a Scorpio and I'm pretty much set in my ways. So I like my saran wrap. I'm always thinking that I might get the Vaseline inside my jar. I don't know why I think that. It's probably going to be fine, but I always kind of think that. Okay. All right, so we'll let that dry, okay? All right. So we'll come back to those in a jiffy. I'm going to move this out of the way as well. Put this way down. Okay. All right. So as we wait for those to dry, we'll come back to those and work on those. We'll show you what we can do on those, how to distress them, and all that good stuff. So next what we're going to do is we're going to take our Bunker Hill blue. I just painted it on a piece of molding I found at home, a trim molding. So what I'm going to do on this particular piece is I want to do a dry brush. So I'm going to use one of my favorites. This is a almost 2-year-old. It's one of the premium chip brushes that we do have them. They are back in stock, so you can go and hurry add them to your cart. I like these for many things, but one of the biggest things I like these for is a dry brush, because it is a stiffer brush. It's not super fine like our other brushes. Like, these are really soft. This is very stiff. This is not something I like to paint chalk paint with. It doesn't seem to do as well. I do use it for some of our milk paints as well. Yep, I kind of knew I was going to get a mess here. All right, so we're going to take the lighter color Bunker Hill. All right. Okay. And we're going to nicely load our brush. Normally, I like to pour these in a little container, but I didn't. So we've got a pretty good amount, but you can see it's not dripping wet. It's not soaking wet. And then what I'm going to do is take a paper towel and I'm going to wipe, and you see how I'm bending it really rough. I'm going to pretty much wipe most of it off. And then I like to, because I work with a lot of paper here, I just make sure that I'm not going to have some weird extra dark spots. And you know what? It's okay if you do. You can always wait for this to dry and then just paint back over it. All right, so what we're gonna do, this is, pretend it's your piece of furniture. We're gonna go ahead and dry brush our other color right on top, okay? And we're gonna go slow and then add pressure as you're going. And you wanna go in one direction. You don't wanna get all willy-nilly unless that's the look you're looking for, then, you know, go for it. But I like to go with the grain of the wood. So if my grain is going this direction, I'm gonna go in the elongated direction. Now let's say I had like a little box around the corners. I would take the boxes and go in the wood grain direction. Okay, so if you have a frame, you're gonna go in the direction of the frame. All right, so we're gonna just kind of keep going on this. And like I said, just keep adding pressure to your wash, or to your dry brush here. And I have a lot of imperfections in this piece of wood, so you'll see it. So if you have, let's say, a design in your piece, you'll see it. Okay, and let's see. And you can see I'm adding a lot more pressure now because this is getting pretty dry. But I'll go ahead and stop for you. All right, so it's gonna be kind of hard to see on the camera, I think. You can see kind of where there was a spot here in the wood. And you can even take, you can highlight those little corners here. So we'll go ahead and, I'm gonna go on that edge right here so I can hit that highlight. Okay, and I may wanna do that on my edges. So just wanna add a little bit, get that on there. All right, so that, you guys might be able to see that. Like I said, it's hard to pick up those colors on the camera. So you can keep going if you want it a little more intense. You can keep adding the lighter color. Let's see if I got a little bit more there. So you can keep adding that as you're working with it. So that's with the dark base, and dry brushing some of that light on top. If you want it a little more intense, just keep dry brushing that lighter color on top. There's no wrong way when it comes to that. All right, so I'm gonna show you real quick the difference between the light and the dark, because sometimes, you know, choosing your color combination, you might go, well, I kind of like the darker color to be on the bottom. And this is just another old brush. This is similar to the chip brush, the premium chip. The regular cheap chip brushes don't work as well. They're not as straight and they're not as stiff. They're gonna be too soft for what we're doing on a dry brush technique. All right, so we're gonna wipe some of this off. Again, I like to just make sure. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pull that across. Because my piece of wood is not perfect, you're going to see all kinds of stuff coming out. So if you've done a base coat that's kind of wild and crazy, you're going to see those brush marks or those crazy marks as well. All right, so I'm going to get those edges. I'm going to just kind of darken those edges up a bit. Okay, so this is a very subtle technique. Now if you want it darker, you can certainly do it darker, and we'll try doing it darker here too. So here's just a little bit. This is the Dusty Blue with the Bunker Hill on that, just a little bit darker. Okay, let's go a little bit more paint, a little darker. Because you know what? At the end of the day, it's just paint, and you can paint right back over it. So never worry about being the right color or the right everything. Nobody's perfect all the time. All right, so we're just gonna kind of go add a little bit more. We're gonna put a little bit more pressure on this. And if you make a boo-boo, it's okay. What you could do, if you put too much, let's say you put too much of the blue. Let me see if I can get this to give me too much. I've done a really good job of making sure I have a dry brush. So this is our dry brush here. So you want to make sure the key with dry brushing is make sure your brush is dry. And stiffer brush, like our premium chip brush, is going to be the way to go. So I'm going to try to make a boo-boo here so we can fix it in a little bit. Trying to make a boo-boo, y'all. All right, so let's say I overworked my paint and I made a boo-boo. Oh no, it's ruined. Don't worry. We'll come back and fix that, and it'll just take a couple of passes. You'll take a little bit of your light, a little bit of your dark, and just the key is making sure it's always dry. So we're gonna let that dry, and we'll come back to that. All right, I may run out of brushes by then, but that's a-okay. All right, so now what we're gonna do, I wanna do a wash. So we're going to do a quick wash on this, and I'm checking, making sure my other pieces are pretty dry down there. So I'm going to take, this is the Bunker Hill, and this is a little more ornate of a piece. So if I was doing a wash on this, there's a couple of ways you can do it, and we're going to just kind of try them out. It's going to be a little harder for me since I'm going to be holding this little piece right here, but we'll manage. All right, so what we're going to do is take our darker color. And we've done it a couple of different ways in our classes where we paint it straight onto the piece and then use the water and then wipe it away. So we're going to do that. Okay, and I'm just going to jam it in there because we got to get it in all those crevices, and we don't need to be cute and pretty about it. Again, we're just using two colors. The lighter color is Dusty Blue and the darker color is Bunker Hill Blue. I don't know, I always want to call it Yankee Blue. Alright, so we're just going to get that on our piece. Okay, this is great if you have a lot of ornate, or let's say you've got embossing on your piece. Then you can show off all that embossing. It's kind of like using it as a glaze without mixing in a glazing medium. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna make sure you guys can see this. So you're just gonna wipe away, and hopefully, because I just painted this today, we're not gonna wipe away our blue paint. So typically you wanna wait about a day before you start doing a wash over your current painted situation. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more water here. And that's pretty much all it takes for the wash. Add a little bit more water here. So painting it one solid color, you're going to work in small segments at a time. So if you have like a drawer, you'll work on that. Then you'll work on your framing and all that good stuff. So that would be a wash. So very similar to how you would do a glaze, but this is all paint and a water mixture, okay? So you can also, to me it's a little bit cleaner. It doesn't get so dirty. Get that side right here. And a wash is pretty forgiving. So if you need to go back over it, well, it's still a little tacky, you can still add a little bit of your paint and that will work. All right, so let's see. Alrighty, let's do this one. And I'm going to, I think I'm trying to decide if I want to dampen my brush, because I really don't, this is gonna be kind of a messy water situation, but we're gonna do it this way. It's pretty close. And so we're going to have a really watery brush. Okay, we stuck it in there, and you just basically same thing. To me, it's really messy because your brush is going to be very wet. I don't really particularly care for it. I don't think my customers did either when we did the class. It just is really messy, and we get everything gets pretty wet. So again, that's just a wash. It's not my favorite this way. I like to paint it onto the piece and then wipe it away. But everybody has their own favorite way to do it. Okay. I have a love-hate relationship with these rags. Sometimes they're super soft and sometimes they're just kind of hard to work with. Okay. And if you guys have any questions, just drop them down in the comments and I'll definitely answer them. I'm gonna get that out of there because you got a lot of little water extra in this guy right here, so it's definitely a different look. And for me, it's a little more coastal when you have the dark with the light going over it. It's a dark paint with the light paint color over it. Okay, so this is having your brush extra wet, and then this one is spraying your piece and wiping it off. Okay, so we started out with the lighter color with the darker on top, darker color, lighter on top. Okay, so that is a wash. Super easy. So I think these are pretty easy techniques, guys. And like I said, if it comes out terrible, that's all right. Just start over, right? It's just paint. The worst part is not painting at all. So, all right. So let's check on our pieces that we had started painting when we first started and see if we can go ahead and get those done. So we first started out with, okay, this piece, and it was painted originally in the Dusty Blue is the base coat of this, and now we have a coat of Bunker Hill on top. Now I'm going to grab my heat gun, and I'm just going to throw a little heat on this real quick just to make sure it's pretty dry. You want to make sure it's fairly dry when you're trying to do this, otherwise it could get gummy on your sandpaper and that just won't be any fun for you, and it kind of leaves a kind of what I call like a paint booger mess. That happens, just stop, let it dry, and then sand that smooth. All right. So a lot of different things going on today, right? So, but you can always go back and watch the replay if you need to watch something over again, or if you have any questions, just don't hesitate to ask. I will always answer them. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we've got our sanding blocks. Now they are a medium and a fine. So you've got fine on one side and you can feel it, it's much finer, and then the medium is a very gritty. Medium is to get like crud off. If you've got a paint drip, I'd use the medium side. If you're trying to do this distressing, I'd start with your fine. And let's see if we're dry enough. Let's hope we are. Okay, so if we're going to just do distressing back, we're just going to lightly sand away. So you'll start to see that light blue right up in here coming through. And you would just do that to all of your high points. And you want to make sure you don't go all the way through to the base wood. I mean, you can, but you're probably wanting to see that blue color that you originally painted on your piece, would be my guess. Otherwise, why would you bother painting it, right? And you certainly don't have to paint the whole piece the other color. You can, if you know you're only going to be distressing, let's say around the edges, you can certainly just paint your edges, blend them out, and the reason I say blend them out, because if you paint like a little square on your piece and you have a thick layer of paint, you're going to see that when you paint over. So I usually would blend it out into the rest. It doesn't really matter. All right. Okay. I'm gonna kind of do a little extra so you guys can see a little bit more. This was a big old piece of wood, so you guys can see that. You're seeing that other color come through. Now you can, that's with this, with a regular sandpaper. Now you can do wet distressing, and that one takes a little bit more patience. So usually if I do wet distressing, I like these little sponges. I get them at the dollar store because I have like a little handle here. So either way, if you're staining, these are great. You put your stain on this side, it's your handle, or if you're using this to wet distress. This is rough. Take care that you don't overdo it if you're doing a lighter color piece, because sometimes if you're putting this too rough on a piece and it's too dry, it can transfer some of the green on it. So make sure this is nice and damp while you're working with it, okay? So we're just going to spray the piece, spray this little green scrubby sponge, okay? And we're going to just work on that. Now I do like to work slow on this because it'll creep up on you quick. And I'm going to tell you, so I don't wipe this off, I dab, because I have done this where if you wipe, sometimes you pull more paint than you expected to pull off, okay? So I usually dab. Dab, 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 because it will go faster than you think. So if you guys can see that, I hope you really can. There you go. All right, we're going to pretend there's a hole right here. We're going to pretend we need to make some distressing here in the middle, because that would be a drawer pull area. So that's where you know there would be some distressing right there. So let's just go ahead and pretend, like I said, if it's a big old hunk of wood and you have a weird distress thing in the middle, it's sometimes kind of weird, but I just want to show you guys so you can see a little bit more distressing, okay? And this is wet distressing, and it sneaks up on you, okay? So it looks a little messy right there, but as we clean that off, it's much more prominent, okay? So wet distressing can be a little less control, I feel, than dry distressing. Dry distressing is a dry sponge, or dry, not sponge, dry sanding sponge, okay? You're just gonna go ahead and go to town on it like that, all right? So let's do a little bit right here so you guys can maybe see the difference on that. You can take a little bit more elbow grease to get through. Okay, and I'm gonna wipe that off. I'm gonna dampen that because now we've created a little dust on our darker color here. All right, so all that work, that was with the dry sanding block. This was a couple of swipes with a wet scrubby. So it goes pretty quick. So I always warn you guys when you're doing wet distressing, it may not look like you've gotten very far, but you have, and just tap it off. You know, tap this off, dry it off like that, because if you go too far, you're gonna go all the way through your wood, and then you kinda, either you embrace in the wood tone also, it's kind of up to you. All right. So again, super duper easy. See that, you guys? That was really fast, really quick. So wet distressing is really easy. You can also do it, since it's a freshly painted, you can also do it with a baby wipe, but I prefer using a little texture with this, okay? All right, so we're gonna put that down. All right, so let's work on, I'm gonna let that other piece dry just a little bit longer. We're gonna work on this guy, and I've got a few more paint brushes in here. Let's see if I've got, alrighty, I have, trying to see what all I have and where my favorites are. 10,000 paint brushes, and I've already dirtied my favorite ones. It's all right. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, since we made a boo-boo on this, we have to fix it, and it would be a series of a couple of steps. So what I would say is you're gonna take some of the blue, we're gonna pour some of that out. We're just gonna go ahead and pour some of our blue out. I need to go ahead and lid those because they're starting to get a little dry. All right, let me put lids on that just for right now. All right. This is just a regular chip brush. This is actually a 3-inch chip brush. It's a pretty decent one. I do have some, it's not the same. The ones I have we usually use for the milk paint. I normally don't do 3-inch because they're so humongous. All right. So again, we're gonna wipe off our excess. Okay. All right, and again, I like to make sure we're not getting some crazy marks here. All right, so we're just gonna go back over that area. And it may take a couple of times to go over this to fix that, but you don't wanna overdo it. If you overdo it, then you've got a nice cloudy spot and you don't want that. So I'll let that dry. And again, you'll just go back over it once it dries a bit more, and just kind of like, let's see, cleaning that up just a bit because you're going to need to go back over it with a darker color. So it's just kind of a little bit of back and forth so you get it just right. And you can also take, if you feel like you've got just a hot mess, kind of felt like it was a little dark, you could take a third color and add it to this also. So if you felt like you got a little too dark, okay. So we'll let that dry a bit. So again, it's just going to be a series of dry brushing over that to fix it. You don't want to put a big paint blob on that because it's just going to make you a big mess. And we don't want that. Okay, so it's just a series of going back over that. And you may have to go with the dark again and then go a little bit light. That's definitely lightening up now. So most of the time you're not going to have a big mess like that. And if you do, if you feel like it's just too hard to fix that area, just paint back over that section. You know, you could just, if this was a drawer front, just paint that drawer front back the original color and then let it dry and then dry brush again. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes it's just better to walk away, go to sleep, come back tomorrow than to deal with something like that. Sometimes. Because sometimes it may not get any better. It may just get worse because you're tired or what have you. So I've learned that the hard way. All right, let's see. All right, so this is the one. Let me get this paintbrush in there. All right, this is the one that we put the Vaseline around the edges, and we also put some Vaseline here in the middle. So I'm just going to hit it with the heat gun. Normally, you guys would let this dry normally at home. You know, let your pieces dry. I can kind of see where our Vaseline is. It's a little slicker looking. And I can see it's kind of separating it just a tad bit. Especially as I add a little heat to it. Now this can remove a lot of paint really quick. So let's take one of our baby wipes. We'll try that out and see how efficiently easy that will be, or not. We'll see. But let me show you real quick. I don't know if you guys can see it, but right here, and you see that slick spot there, right there. That's where we have our Vaseline. So that's where your paint is not really adhering, our top coat, and we have it all on the edges as well. So let's go ahead and see if just rubbing that off with a baby wipe will help. Otherwise, we can just get a little sanding block and not a big deal. And it'll kind of roll. It's how, to me, it feels like it rolls off. And as you guys get to painting, you'll kind of understand what I mean by rolls off versus rub off. Okay? So keep in mind, no matter what you do, if you have put Vaseline on this piece and you didn't mean to do it in the middle, it's still going to come off even if you put a top coat on. So it's not, if you didn't mean to do it, I would say get that off and then just put your original color on there. All right, so let's see. And we had a little bit more on the edges, if you guys recall. All right, so we just kind of got it started. So see the difference on that versus sanding it away. So this has, like I said, the Vaseline on it. So it's just kind of a means for your paint to not stick or adhere as well. So we always want to remember, if you're working with the Vaseline and you have it on your hands, don't touch your piece all over, because then you might be really sad. You have a lot of fingerprints where you didn't mean to. All right, and this is coming off pretty easy with a baby wipe. You could do a damp cloth. You could sand it. I've sanded it before, but generally it's just easier. I don't like the particles in the air, so that's why I don't normally do as much sanding unless I'm outside. So just really don't care for breathing all the particles in. Okay, let's see if we can get that off. And you will go through a little bit because it'll get a little dirty on you. This gives you more of a chippier look than just sanding it. So if you want a chippy look without maybe using, like, let's say a milk paint, this would be an alternative. You just use your chalk paint with your Vaseline and just a little elbow grease of wiping it back with a damp cloth, or like I said, a baby wipe. Okay. All right, we're gonna get that middle because we know we've got some there in the middle too. So let's see how that comes off. Okay. So there is that Vaseline kind of inhibited that paint to stick there. I can see it down here. And see how that kind of slid right off? That's what I call your paint just rolls off. So that's why when you're doing your wet distressing, I tell you to tamp it like that if you don't want that look. We've got the Vaseline on this, so I want to get all the parts that are fresh or have the Vaseline under it off so that your paint doesn't have little failures here and there later. Okay. Get all of that. Make sure we got all our little Vaseline areas off. Okay. So remember, wherever you put the Vaseline, your paint is not going to stick. We're just going to wipe that off. Okay. So that gives you a much more chippy look. All right. So very chippy on your edging and your middle there. So Vaseline will make a little more chippy, which if that's your look you're going for, perfect. If not, let's stick to just sanding or wet distressing on your piece. Pretend there was a handle there. That's what we have, distressing in the middle. All right. So let's see, we've gone over a couple things there. Make sure I didn't miss anything. We're still gonna let this guy dry. Like I said, you would do like another coat, and we might do another coat before we quit this video. But since we have a little bit of time, I just wanna show you real quick, get all my messy things out of the way here. So there is some other things you can do, and we're just gonna take a, let's go with the darker one. All right, so if we painted our piece dark, and we're gonna see if this works. I'm not sure it's gonna work. This is a pretty rough piece, so it may work well. If you have a very smooth piece, it may not work as well. I like to take about 3 different colors when we're doing, this is what I'm about to do is a smear. And I usually get these little blocks from Michael's. You can get them, they're unpainted. I painted it because I thought I was going to do something with it, and then I ended up not doing something with it and using it to do a smear on a piece. It's very unpredictable, and I like to do several colors so it looks like old chippy paint that's been on your piece for 100 years. And you let each layer dry, because if you try to do it while it's still wet, it's going to be a big hot mess. So I just put my paint in a little saucer like this, and I just apply it to my piece, and we're going to just go with it. Get us some of the excess off. Alright, so like I said, I don't know how this one's going to look because we've done it before. You can add texture to this if you want. I would add texture to your first one, and then after that just use paint. And again, if you have a very smooth surface, it may not come out as well. So you're going to see all the different And if your little block, you could take a, let's say a 2x4, which may be less perfect than this. That would be great. Just do your smear with that. Like I said, just do one color at a time. If you try to do them all together, it's going to be a big hot mess, and you won't get the results you're looking for. Okay? Alright, so that's just one coat. You can go whatever direction. I tend to go up and down and side to side. And like I said, I'd add another color. So add a whiter cream. You could add any colors you want. Just again, let them dry completely before you're doing your smear. So when you do it, I tend to wipe this off, get it cleaned a little bit. Doesn't have to be rinsed off, but just clean enough. So that's easy, very chippy, distressed look for that. So, all right, let me wipe that off real quick. And I think I'm just looking around here. We'll go over everything real quick. All right, so I'm wiping that down because otherwise we'll make a big old mess for later. All right, so we had, let me find all my pieces of wood here. Alrighty. So we did light or dark with a light dry brush, very hard to see. I did very light. You can see it in person for sure. And if you wanted it darker, you can continue to add more of the light color to dry brush over it, or add multiple colors on it. This was our light color with the dark on top. Again, just making a boo-boo over here. This will soften up just a couple more passes with the dry brushing. It's not going to happen like immediate, so you'll do a couple more passes to fix that area, and you may need to do a little bit of dark as well. Or embrace it. You could embrace it, do some other darker spots, and maybe do a wash over the whole thing. That could be another option as well. We also did the wash. This was the Dusty Blue with painting directly the Bunker Hill and then using the water to wipe it away. And then we also did the Bunker Hill with a watery mixture of Dusty Blue on top. So a little bit different. To me, it's a little more coastal when you have the lighter color on the darker color. And then of course we had just some regular sanding right here. This was sanding with just a sanding pad, and this is wet distressing. So you definitely get a little bit more off when you're wet distressing, especially when it's fairly fresh. You can wait a day or two and it's still going to do pretty well like this. And then of course using Vaseline as an inhibitor to your paint is going to give you that chippier look. We did the dark color first and Bunker Hill, and then we went over with the Dusty Blue. Of course, in between the coats we put Vaseline in key areas. And like I said, if you're doing your distressing, think about where that piece or how that piece would have been used. Where is that distressing going to be? So when you're doing your sanding, whether it's sanding your Vaseline or your wet distressing, where would that normal wear be? Like where would be people handling that piece? Like, it always drives me crazy. Like, seriously, I see a piece and it's got this random weird spot, and I'm always like, maybe Aunt Ethel put her hot pad there. I don't know. And then again, this is the schmear, and just taking a block. Again, you can get a 2x4, whatever floats your boat. I'm lazy, so I happen to have this, so I was like, oh, let me just use that, and then put it on some wood. And then I would take a second or third color, and maybe even another color on top of that. But again, let this dry totally, otherwise you have a milky mess, and you won't be very happy with the results. So it is going to be a little thicker on the application, but I have a cool piece on my patio that we've done with several colors, like the sage color. We've done the vintage duck egg, buttercream, and then another color that was the wash on the bottom, I think driftwood. So those colors came out great, but you can get very high contrasted colors, whatever floats your boat. Throw some gilding wax in there, whatever. But again, these are all easy peasy. If you mess it up, just repaint it. Not a big deal, right? So that's all I have for you guys today. You guys are awesome. Happy painting. Make sure you share this. Make sure you like this. Go to my website if you have anything you need to have, or come and see me. We're here every day but Mondays. Y'all have a good one.